We're in the midst of the Parawing craze and wing foiling's copping a bit of flack for its wave riding compatibility. I think a lot of people would enjoy riding waves with the wing gear that they already have if they just learnt this one technique. I'm gonna pull up a video that shows exactly what I'm talking about, and it kind of aligns a little bit with how to stow your Parawing. So you can see I turn downwind with my wing flagged out. I get the strut to kind of catch the water as it loses the wind. And because the wind's no longer holding it up, the friction between the strut and the water drags the wing behind me. And then I have that freedom that everyone's raving about with the Parawing. I can then turn left, I can turn right, and surf the wave the way that I want to. I'm having a lot of fun learning Parawing, and I've definitely enjoyed the freedom that comes from stowing the Parawing away and riding waves. But I still had most of that with my wing. It's definitely a different experience, and it's forced me to use bigger foils despite me always chasing smaller and smaller foils to go faster and push my foot switches and tacking and jibing. But I thought it was important to make this video because I think that there's a lot more fun to be had with smaller foils in big bumps that can be accessed using a wing without needing to still do the car shuffles and things like that of downwinding. And again, using small foils in big bumps, which is insanely fun. And what it boils down to is getting the wing to hit and then rotate behind you. So as I said, you're going fast, you flag the wing out and turn downwind. You keep turning, keep turning, keep turning. And you should turn enough that the strut of the wing drops when it's to your side a bit, and then that should carry the wing behind you, and then you should be able to surf as much as you want. There are some things to consider with this technique though. It's not all perfect. Things to consider are the wing size, the weight of the wing, the leash setup that you're using, and the strength of the wind on the day. This technique works really well if you can get away with the smallest possible wing size that still allows you to get up onto that smaller style foil. For me, I've found a 5 meter in that 10 to 18 knots and a 4 meter 18 to 30 knots, 3 meter probably in that 28 plus sort of range. You need it to be small enough that the wind holding the wing up isn't too much to the point that even when you do turn downwind, it's still going to get supported. Because if that's the case and the wind is always supporting the wing, it's kind of stuck out in front of you, getting blown downwind of you. And that's where you do get that effect that people talk about with winging, where you've got something in front of you and it kind of kills the freedom of the bump riding. The other side of it is the weight of the wing. I know light wings are more desirable and they definitely help in most cases with surfing, but a little bit of swing weight on the wing will actually help it to lose apparent, drop down a little bit earlier on, hit the water and then rotate behind you. And the other thing is when it's behind you and you're surfing bumps and maybe the apparent wind catches up to you, it's less likely for the wind to pick up the trailing edge of the wing and actually flip it over onto you. If you do slow down enough when riding the wave, there's a chance that that will happen and the wing will actually just flip and kind of hit you in the back, and then you'll probably fall off. That's wing size and wing weight. You're aiming for small surface area wings so that it's less likely for the wind to pick it up when it's behind you, and it's also less likely to get stuck being supported by the wind even when you turn downwind. And then the weight, is going to help to get it to hit the water and then rotate around. The other thing I wanted to touch on was leash setup. I generally run my leash for my wing to the front of my impact vest, and it's a really clean setup. It allows me to hook into the harness line and not have the leash in the way, and it's consistent from tack to tack. The length is the exact same from the front of my impact vest to my wing, whether I'm on port or whether I'm on starboard. But the downside is when I do this technique and I flag the wing out behind me, sometimes I would do kind of a behind the back handle pass. And that's not really an option if you've got the leash attached to your impact vest, because you do that handle pass behind you and you've done a wrap around your waist. Whereas if it's on the wrist leash, you can kind of just bring your hand over your head like that, and that unwraps that waist wrap that you've done around yourself when you did that handle pass. If you're optimizing your wing setup for wave riding, I think the wrist leash is probably the better option, especially if you're wanting to do this technique in combination with some handle passes behind your back, which will then save you from, if you're cutting right or cutting left a lot more, it'll save you from having to bring the wing all the way around the front, swap hands, get it over to this side of you, and then somehow get it to flick behind you as well. The one other concept I think that's really important to understand with this technique is apparent wind. Fortunately for me, I came from sailing, and sailing fast boats gives you a really good understanding of apparent wind. Apparent wind is a tricky one to explain, but it's essentially the sum of the wind you generate by moving through the air and the wind that's present on the day. So 20 knot northerly and you're going 15 knots in this direction, your apparent wind is going to be coming from somewhere between those two directions, and the apparent wind speed will be the sum of the difference between those two speeds with some complex trigonometry thrown into the mix. For this surfing technique, the oversimplified example that helps to explain it a bit more would be if you're going magically dead downwind at 20 knots of speed, directly downwind, and you've got a 10 knots of wind on the day. I know this is completely fictional and probably impossible to actually do, but say that was the case, your apparent wind speed would be the 10 knots of wind that's going down the page, take away your 20 knots of speed, and what that gives you is actually negative 10 knots. So you would feel 10 knots of wind coming directly onto your nose because you're going faster than the wind. The important thing to understand about this concept is when you do turn downwind, you're going to be traveling 15, 18 knots of speed, and there's going to be a point at which you catch that the wind speed actually catches back up to you. So you're likely going to be going faster than the wind as you're going through your reaching angle. And then as you turn downwind, there's most likely going to be a time when you're going about 15 knots and you've got 15 knots coming from behind you. Those two speeds cancel out, and that's where that wing drops down. So you're sort of aiming for that point. As you turn downwind, you keep turning, the wing will drop because the wind speed has caught up to your speed, and then your apparent wind in that moment is nothing. It's like you're out foiling magically in no wind. That's what causes the wing to drop. It hits the water, it rotates around behind you, and then you have that freedom to surf as much as you want. The issue with this technique is if you use a wing that's too big or really light, and the wind then overtakes you and starts lifting the wing up from behind your back and blowing it over onto your back. I know it's a complicated one to explain, but hopefully that helps to understand a little bit of the physics behind how this technique works. As a little reward for those that stuck around, a little bonus tip that I have found that really helped my surfing, whether it is parawing or winging or downwinding, is understanding the sort of go, no-go zones within a wave. And I've heard this explained in podcasts as like your traffic light system, red, orange, green portions of a wave. For someone that came from sailing and didn't really know much about waves, this really helped me to improve my foiling game. Essentially, you've got the peak of the wave, sort of that green zone. As you move down the peak, heading towards the trough, you've got that orange zone, and then that trough leading into the next wave in front is that red zone where there's just not much energy at all. If you can always be either in the green zone or heading back to the green zone, then you'll spend a lot more time surfing the wave and not stalling out. I know when I started learning to ride waves, I spent a lot of time overtaking the wave and then wondering why there was no energy in the foil. Even if I pumped like crazy, it'd still stall out. And it's for that exact reason. You're getting into the portion of the wave that doesn't have the correct type of energy and the right amount of energy, and it actually just zaps it away from your foil. You got nothing left. So if you can manage to stay in those zones on the wave, always be heading back to that green zone. And even apply this when you're watching some YouTube videos of some of the insane prone foiling guys, you'll come to understand how they're able to absolutely rip and use the most energy out of the wave. That's it for this one. If you like this video, I think you'll like these ones, so go check them out.